everyone, and thank you so much for being here with me tonight. Wow, we're here. We made it. I was having technical difficulties, and it made me a little bit nervous, but we are here on time. So thank you so much for showing up here. So tonight is our special UFO night, and we beamed in some guests here to join me tonight. Let me go ahead and bring on my co-host, the gentleman with all knowledge. I think he is also not of this world, Mr. Cardinal Sin.
Hello there.
Hey there. Thank you so much for being here. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here. And I'm going to bring on our guest tonight who enjoys our topic of discussion. And we'll get us started off here. Another out of this world person, Mr. Kamran. Hey there, Pasha. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi, Maria. Hi, Gil. And Maria, you got something very shiny going on there. Is that like a what was that?
I think she's bedazzled.
Village Boys, whatever. You know, that's very cool. Like
the little. I thought I wanted a hat to go with tonight, and so I thought, this looks like spaceship.
Yeah.
Yeah, little bedazzly spaceshipy stuff. Something that I thought I would bring on, aside from my cowboy hat. But thank you for being here, Mr. Kamran. Good to see you. It's been a little while. And for everybody who is watching us tonight, I'm kind of trying to back up here a little bit. PJ, thanks for joining. He's saying hello to everybody. Celine, thank you for joining us. I haven't seen you here. Good to see you here. And let me see who else I have really quick. Alicia, our ranch tonight. Thank you so much. And I hope I gave you all the links I needed to give you. If not, I do apologize. I thought I sent it to you. And Heather's Tabletop and Fantasies. Well, good to see you here. Thank you so much. We have a few people here tonight. TJ, our author, TJ, author of sci-fi, by the way. I'll have to check out. He's got a few books out. I'm going to have to check and see if he's got an alien-y kind of one, UFO-y kind. Louise, thank you so much for joining. Oh, my goodness. Wow. And Tony, good to have you here as well. Ari, and wow, thank you for joining. Shoosh. I'm gonna listen. and that's Cameron. Okay, well, you know what? I'm excited to start. I kind of like the whole UFO bit, and I had one person say, I don't believe in UFOs because I haven't seen any, but I also I've never seen $1 million, but I know it exists.
I've never seen Australia. It's there.
But it's there.
It's the thing is, when someone says they don't believe in UFOs, I think the statement is, I don't believe in extraterrestrial craft visitors. I think that's how people interpret that. They're certainly unidentified. The new Air Force term is UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. There's certainly stuff people see in the skies that throughout human history that they have not been able to explain, and throughout modern history. You don't have to believe in UFOs to know that the U.S. government has admitted that it has these strange UAPs and apparently craft that its Air Force jets have captured that don't seem to follow the laws of physics as we know them. That's from the
captured on video, not captured.
It's not a matter of belief. I mean, what they are is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
But I think it is an accepted phenomenon. At the very least, governments are now openly stating this is what we've captured. So they may be lying. You know, there are government conspiracies. So maybe these videos are all fraudulent, and then we have to ask why. But at least that's the current government position of the United States.
Maybe
Unidentified aerial phenomenon that it sometimes appears to be craft that is definitely not behaving according to the laws of physics. So that is the current narrative that we're all in the middle of.
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's how I was explaining it too. A UFO is basically unidentified. If I saw something flying over my head and I don't know what it is, to me, it's technically it's a UFO because it's unidentified.
That's what it is.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it's an alien space. It just means I don't recognize it. It's not something I know of.
That's the reason that the Air Force went forward in the military or the Pentagon, if you will, with the UAP moniker because it doesn't have the baggage that 75 years of UFO investigation, sightings, etc. have. And let's face it, the government of the United States and many other countries, believes in it enough to investigate the hell out of it secretly. Since Project Blue Book was shut down in 1969, obviously they went on to continue to research it. Recently, they sank $22 million into Bigelow Aerospace to research mostly, actually, as it turns out, Skinwalker Ranch, but they have their fair share of UFO sightings there too.
Well, and on that show, they've actually used those two terms specifically. Unidentified aerial phenomenon and unidentified flying object. And I actually think those terms are useful if they're differentiated, because I've shared on Gil's channel, Cardinal Sin's channel, my personal, what I consider a UFO experience, but it's more technically a UAP. What I saw, I could not say was a physical craft, but it was certainly an extraordinary phenomenon in the sky that I could not see physical features to that could say it's a metallic object, right? But on that show, they have all kinds of lights in the sky and strange things moving that they capture in their cameras that they call UAPs, but then they capture things that appear to have metallic edges, that appear to have a physical core. Then they're like, well, we're going to call that unidentified flying object because it's an actual object. It's not a light. It's not some kind of phenomenon that we don't know whether it's physical or energetic. It's an actual physical craft of some kind. So I think it's useful to start using these two terminologies. Overlap, but they may not be the same.
Absolutely. And I think I know that there's a lot of conspiracies out there for whatever reason. I've always tried to look at the arguments on both. I think some of it, of course, they have to be secretive in the fact that people tend to, I would assume that most of it is to avoid panic, because people will start, if something moves, they shoot it, Well,
that may have been the original thing. I think after, as Bill said, it's been 75 years of this in certainly American consciousness. I don't know that they would cause panic anymore. I think there may be other reasons why it's being...
Well, to your point, Cameron, when this hit the New York Times and Politico in 2017, that the Pentagon had decided to go ahead and say, yes, these things are real. We don't know what they are or whose they are, but we know that they're real. And then the weird stuff, like, one of these UAP coming back to the cap point, which was only known to the mission specialists on board. I believe it was the Roosevelt and the pilots of the F-18 Super Hornets in 2004, who are qualified observers, if there is one. The government never stopped believing in UFOs, and the thing that I think really shows that we can handle the truth is that when this thing happened in 2017 and they released those videos, it didn't, nobody panicked. It hardly raised an eyebrow,
And had that article come out in 1951, it might very much have caused unrest. And we know historically we have the famous incident of the War of the Worlds radio cast, right? Where you had Orson Welles do this radio cast, where he's essentially doing a fictional, an adapted version of War of the Worlds, where he essentially, it's presented as a news report that people in New Jersey are reporting this alien invasion. And it actually caused mass panic throughout the country. People were going out, as Maria said, with shotguns out into the streets of New Jersey and other places where the report was. And it was a national phenomenon because they didn't say this is a fictional thing. So we know certainly in the turn of the century would have caused that panic. But now, as Gil says, that's out there. It's been out there for now, 4 or 5 years? We're all just kind of going with it. Yeah. And maybe that was the entire disclosure process, that it took them 70 years to acculturate us. There are those who claim that Steven Spielberg was, that the U.S. government pushed Close Encounters of the Third Kind. J. Allen Hynek, who was, as you mentioned, Project Blue Book. He was the head of Project Blue Book. He's actually in the film, right, in a brief cameo. But that's very interesting that the head of Project Blue Book is actually featured as an actor, in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So people have always said this was all these things, Independence Day, they're all part of a government release to get us all saturated with it. That's certainly possible.
Mm-hmm. I'm always cracking up and I think I've mentioned this before, that, we have all this technology, yet that's one of the few things that we can actually get a really good shot of. And there's a lot of videos and stuff of it, and I don't want to bring up this subject because I'm kind of sticking with UFOs, but it's kind of like the ghost. Most people see an orb and they assume that it's a ghost. Same thing with UFOs. People assume that they see something, an orb, and assume that that's what it is. But our cameras can't seem to capture a lot. There have been a lot of videos, and I was trying to pull some up that I wouldn't get in trouble for showing. But now with everybody having these door job things, what do they call those, videos on their door? They've been capturing a lot of interesting stuff. And there was one, and I was wanting to pull up the video, and it wouldn't let me, but there was a story here. Let me see, where did I put it? That was caught on a porch cam. I don't know why it won't let me pull up the video. Hang on one second. And Gil, of all the times you've been doing these, did you ever come across a video that, because I know some of your guests do that and they write about it and they have things. Did you have a visual?
No, I have a couple of tabs pulled up for recent sightings, and also just the fact that it is a 75-year anniversary. But there has been, I guess, the release of a photograph that's been making a lot of noise on the internet of a pilot that took a photo, I think in 1952, that has a jet behind it and this obvious saucer very close. And I guess this is a photo that has been either classified or confidential, that recently got declassified, because it's been making the rounds of all the UFO shows and things like that. So I don't know if either of you have seen that, but it's certainly very compelling.
Okay.
I don't know the specific one you're referencing. I'd love to see it if we're able to pull it up.
That would be good. I was reading from this story here, because there seems to have been a lot more stories coming up as I was researching it that are pretty current, and there's certainly a lot of information from the past, but some of these that are current, I was just kind of curious on. This happened in Burbank.
California, here, Los Angeles, Burbank.
Yep, place here. So they were, oh my gosh, trying to do this on my glasses. That's hilarious. Let me try this again.
I think glasses are sexy, don't you, Cameron?
Keep taking them off. Like a nerd. The camera's like, don't put me on the spot.
No comment on the loveliness of ladies. Never had a problem.
Oh, you're so sweet. You guys are awesome. Let me move
Maybe
this
it's
over a little bit.
Glasses bias.
I tried to take them off because of the glare, but so it says that the porch camera was able to catch the trajectory of something glowing and unusual in the sky above Burbank, and there was no one was quite sure of what it was. Eyewitnesses' accounts of the object describe it as behavior in a manner inconsistent with regular aircraft, atmospheric phenomena, or even space debris. So this is where we're kind of explaining it is unidentified. They're not able to explain it. And so the verbiage here is that of not saying, oh yeah, this is definitely, something alien here.
Well,
in the video.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go ahead, please.
I'll say, what's interesting is that look, we're in 2022, and we have perhaps been in a culture, certainly over the last several years, where the powers that be have told us that we seem to know everything, particularly about science, right? They have certainly directed our lives around what they believe to be the knowledge of science. And now, so in a world like that, where there's a lot of certainty about our alleged knowledge of the universe, it is actually even more compelling to have things where you say you can't identify them, right? In 1910, a lot of stuff in the sky you can't identify, right? You don't understand things necessarily. But then when today, with all of that alleged scientific knowledge that we've developed in the last century, if we can't identify something today, if the Air Force looks at something and goes, yep, we got nothing like that, violates the laws of physics and we understand them, that's rather compelling. The laws of physics in 1700, don't understand them that well. Laws of physics in 22, you think you do. So it's really, the idea of unidentified today has a lot more weight.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially when you factor in that the very qualified observers flying these Super Hornets talk about, there's no wings, there are no control surfaces. On the infrared camera, we're not seeing any heat source from propulsion. So these are objects that seem to be utilizing some sort of field propulsion that is, something that nobody on this planet, no nation or person on this planet has.
Or at least has admitted to having. And if they had it, they pretty much win at this point, against everyone.
Well, yeah. And they're being seen all over the world. And there are some things that Occam's razor is going to cut out, but we don't have to reach for the extraterrestrial, although I think the ETH is as good an idea as anything else. Yeah. But they may be interdimensional, they may be crypto-terrestrial beings that we share.
You could have could be all spacecraft from another planet, another solar system, another galaxy, using interdimensional portals to come here that are, there's all kinds of intermingling of these terminologies in this phenomenon.
And to what Maria was saying earlier in the show, UFO sightings and Bigfoot sightings happen with a great deal of they're cited together a lot more than people think. I remember when I had
orbs that Maria was saying are often cited in Bigfoot sightings, or even on these like expedition Bigfoot type shows. More and more people are actually, they may not capture Bigfoot, but they're capturing strange orbs in the forest while they're looking for Bigfoot. That's right. Overlapping.
And when I was interviewing the guys that wrote Where the Footprints End about paranormal Bigfoot, Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner, Timothy actually said, in Pennsylvania, if you find me a UFO, or rather a Bigfoot sighting, I'll find you a UFO sighting within 10 miles and 1 week. And a lot of researchers, and I may have said this on your show before, Maria, and I apologize if I am repeating myself, but a lot of times investigators of Bigfoot will say to the UFO investigators, keep your UFOs out of my Bigfoot. And vice versa, they'll say, keep your Bigfoot out of my UFOs, when actually these things are seen quite a bit together or with very little time in between.
So I wanted to, the reason I separate for a second, I wanted to hold up this book, which you may be familiar with, Gil. It's called Silent Invasion by Stan Gordon, right?
I've got a copy of that.
So it's a book it's called the Pennsylvania UFO Bigfoot Casebook. So what it is this is an examination of this phenomenon, I believe early 70s, where you suddenly had these mass sightings of UFOs in Pennsylvania that would consistently coincide with Bigfoot sightings. And there were so many documented accounts of the two phenomena overlapping at the same incident that worthy of an entire book looking at all of these incidences. So there clearly is some kind of overlap. I have expressed my theories as to what all of this is, and I'm happy to share them perhaps later in today's podcast. But yeah, I think there's a reason why they're connected. Some people think, for those who are of the belief that UFOs are alien craft from another planet, another galaxy, then they would say, well, are Sasquatch, are these actually an alien being, or are they an experiment by the alien being? There's some kind of hybrid using their genetics and genetics. Are they a hybrid alien human kind of race? Is that why they look hominid? There's all kinds of theories for those who have a material basis for this phenomenon. I have another thesis for this phenomenon, but definitely that is one common thesis, that the Bigfoot may actually be a form of alien or a hybrid created by them.
And to that point, I wanted to reference a book by Mark Davenport, who's sadly no longer with us, but it's called Visitors from Time, The Secret of the UFOs. And it was his contention that UFOs were us from the future. And that's one reason why it's so easy for them to have a hybridization program. Maybe eventually humanity leaves Earth and finds a planet that has very low light conditions, and so the eyes get bigger, and given enough time, our brains become larger, so we have a larger head. Maybe it's in a low gravity planet, so we don't need such big arms and legs, that kind of thing. And it was his contention that the grays are basically us from the future. And of course, recently, and not so recently, there's been a lot of talk about that the UFOs and the UFO knots specifically have something to do with our dead, which I find very interesting, fascinating, really.
But I'm sorry, I'll explain that idea a little bit more. What do they have to do?
Whitley Strieber, for instance, among others, was convinced that the visitors that he was experiencing had something to do with our dead, and his wife, especially Ann Strieber, who passed away a couple of years ago, and he claims helped him write his most recent book about UFOs and our dead. They got a lot of letters. There's a book called The Communion Letters. After Communion was published, they got just tons and tons of mail about people saying, I've had this exact same experience. And before he wrote his book about with Ann Strieber from the other side, he chatted with me about the fact that he thinks that the visitors have something to do with our dead. For example, in some abduction experiences, people have reported seeing their dead loved ones aboard the craft along with the grays. So, that's happening more.
That certainly is linked to my own opinion that this is an interdimensional phenomenon, and it's a phenomenon related to consciousness. And because then that would at least certainly be one explanation why the souls of passed away people could be perceived in this phenomenon, right? Because it's related to consciousness, and if, as I believe, the soul passes on to another dimension, you can call it the astral plane or anything you want to call it, then that ties in. So that's definitely one way to look at it. But
energy can neither be created nor destroyed, right?
Right. So Maria, I'm sorry, we two guys are taking over your channel.
No, you're fine. Your guests.
The invasion of the men.
Let's get some estrogen perspective here.
No, I was actually thinking that I know that a lot of this. You have from one extreme to the very end of the pendulum, where there's everything in between. So many theories, so many things, and a lot of people are like, okay, I can't understand or believe this sort of thing. Mostly people are like most Missourians, show me state unless they see it. But my thing is this. I like to do these in the sense that we constantly at these shows, so that we can constantly question, so that we can constantly wonder, because our planet and then beyond is so humongous, is so huge-trocious. Why would we think that we're the only ones that exist, the only living species in this small little planet of this huge galaxy? And so I often wonder what is out there. And I'm always wanting to question. I hope, like everybody else, that we can find out if we really are alone. I don't think so, but because that would be kind of weird for it not to be. And like Gil's saying too is that most people don't want to believe because they wouldn't want to it's hard for them to think of anything that doesn't look like us with 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 eyes, and the whole thing. And everybody's like not imagining, like Gil was saying, the dark eyes with the big head and stuff. But there's also, like you said, there's different atmospheres out there that would, like fish, the fish that are on the surface, if they go all the way down to the bottom, and like I think they did a test once where the fish that were on the surface, they put down at the bottom, the ones at the bottom came to the top, and they actually adjusted to that climate.
To the pressure?
The pressure, the ones that were blind ended up being able to see, and vice versa. So they
life finds a way. Life finds a way, right?
Yes. So I think that's what happens, and why we may, yeah. And so all of the things that might be out there are gonna look different, whatever. So we're going from, and I bring this up because it brings us back to unidentified flying objects that are out there. Their car just is better than ours.
You brought an interesting point here, because when I had my UFO experience, which I've shared with Gil, and maybe I can share a little bit of it today, but when I had my experience, it was in the Atacama Desert of Chile in 2019, right? Never had one before, haven't had one since, but it was life-changing when I did have it. And I was with with the 3 witnesses, myself and 2 other people who saw this together, and one of them was a professional pilot. And he said to me, "No, that's not anything I've ever seen. It's not an airplane. It's not a drone. It's not a satellite. That's something beyond my entire experience." And he was in awe. And so when we shared this with other people that we were with that hadn't seen the phenomenon, right? People are like, "Oh, that's interesting." Most people are like intrigued by it. One person went out of his way to mock it. It was very threatening to him to have this even presented. And for the trip that we were on, I was still in Chile for another 3 or 4 days. He went out of his way to single me out wherever we went and mock me. Like we would walking down the street and he'd point up, there'd be an airplane, flying across the sky. "Oh, there goes your UFO," right? Yeah, he was so threatened by it that he couldn't let it go.
Challenged his paradigm.
Exactly. And I didn't intend to, but he was an academic. So often in my experience, professors in the modern university tend to be very rigid in their understanding of the world and rigid in their belief that all that has ever been known is known to them and nothing more can be known. That's almost like a cultural phenomenon in academia right now, which is unfortunate because academia is all about searching for knowledge, but there seems to be this issue right now culturally. But it was so threatening to him, which is why I found that the people that are most vehement about "I don't believe in it," it seems to come from one of a couple of places. Maybe they're linked. One is it's a threatening to their paradigm, right? That, it's threatening to their ego that there could be something they do not know of. And at the same time, it's both that inner sense, because everything you just said, Maria, anyone with a brain can grasp if there's life on another planet with different ecological realities, different gravity, the solar, sunlight, all that stuff will evolve differently. I mean, H.G. Wells was writing that 100 years ago in War of the Worlds in his books. I mean, this is something that's intuitively self-evident. Yet it feels like, because it is intuitively self-evident, the people that the most loudest about it are often the ones that are longing for that to be true, but have so convinced themselves of their own superior intellect that they're fighting themselves, their own intuition of the wonder of this reality. It's like when that gentleman was mocking me, it's almost like he's mocking that voice within himself that says,
"Absolutely,
wow, there's something that's more than you know." And it's like he's fighting himself. He's not even fighting me.
Oops, I just put myself on mute here. Absolutely. And the comments that are coming from this stream are very interesting. I'd like to, if you don't mind, entertain some of those.
Yeah.
So bear with me a moment, because they're backing up a little bit. Because some of these stories are interesting, and I'm sorry I'm not able to go too far back. But Agent Pepsi, good to see you. Thanks, by the way. Says that she saw a UFO together with my dad, a pilot, while camping in '99. We saw a virtually silent object making an abrupt turns like 30 to 45 degrees.
which both of which are physically impossible. Even a drone makes sound in the sky. You get a drone 700 feet up in the air, you'll still hear the whir, right? And so, that was what I experienced. I experienced a completely silent phenomenon in the sky. That was like, okay, what the hell is that? And then 30 degree, 40 degree, 5 degree angles. I saw that as well in my experience. And so that's, to my knowledge, that is aerodynamically impossible based on our understanding of the current physics, right? So it can't be based on Newtonian physics, whatever's happening there.
I think our brain kind of tries to conform to an understanding, an idea, a closure, because we can't understand it. It doesn't let us sleep at night. So I know people will try to come up with some kind of logical reason why, and that's fine. I think it's good that people use logic, but at the same time, I think it stifles some of the ability to understand that there's more out around our surroundings. I mean, I'm the kind of person who has to know everything that's going on around me so that I'm prepared. I still look in the backseat.
And that's survival instinct, and that's smart. And maybe that's one of the reasons some people resist it, because I had this experience that was extraordinary, and these other people did not see it. And so there's the fight or flight. If there's a reality, could it be a threat to me? And so there's an instinctive reaction. Well, I didn't see it, so I don't know if it's true. Right. And it's a threat to me. I'm not ready for it, so I'm going to block it out.
Right. And that's kind of a bad kind of way of thinking, because to me, you kind of want to be prepared. You want to understand. I think for me, some of it is because out of curiosity, I want to know. But some of it is, like you're saying, fight or flights, and just a preparation of what that might be. But let me see what else I have out here. Somebody's asking about here.
If I can,
yes,
interrupt briefly. On Wednesday, I had Mr. Albert Rosales on Into the Fringe, my paranormal show, which I have every Wednesday between 7 to 9 p.m. Central. And he has written 16 books. He used to have an online database of over 20,000 entries focusing on humanoid encounters, what he calls the others among us. And yesterday, as we were going through some of the sightings of humanoids, sometimes with, sometimes without craft or orbs, that kind of thing, one thing that struck me was how different some of these creatures look from each other. And that because this is a worldwide phenomenon, and certainly that's the case with these documented sightings, that it seems like almost to a person, these sightings are informed by their own religious experience, their upbringing, their geographical location.
It's their paradigm. I mean, people are going to interpret it, which, if I may just build into what you're saying there, is that, actually, let me show you. One of the wonderful books I'm reading right now is wonderful called Origins of Gods, right? It's a really interesting book by Andrew Collins, who's often on Ancient Aliens, and Gregory Little. And what it is, it's looking at shamanistic practices throughout history, particularly Native Americans. It's looking at recent discoveries of something like a 15,000-year-old cave in modern Palestine, right? Which has all these bones that suggest there were these shamanistic ritual practices being done thousands of years ago. And the consistent thread is that, these shamans, whether they're Native Americans or other traditions, are experiencing these other beings. And the descriptions would to us sound like aliens, but that's not how they interpreted them, right? They interpret them in the context of their language, their culture, and their mythology, right? And we have a modern mythology, which is, when I say mythology, I'm not saying their stories are not true. It's just they interpret it through the language of story that they had. We have a language of story that includes science fiction, includes things. In Pakistan, this is a story my mother told me. One of her great uncles in Karachi in like the 1940s, he had what we would consider an alien abduction phenomenon, but he described it using Islamic terminology that was his world, which is the jinn appeared in my bedroom, little jinn, right?
Little jinn
aboard their ship, and they took me to their jinn world, and he explained it in purely Islamic terms of genies, right? Is that the incorrect way to look at it? No, that's that's the language he's got. These are alien beings the correct way? No, that's the language we've got. It is a phenomenon that seems to go back thousands of years worldwide in every culture of the abduction phenomenon, of experiencing these crafts, these lights in the sky, and we're all going to project onto it our paradigm. There's no other way to interpret it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Hang on one second. There's some more stuff coming on at here. Our future, yeah. Sorry, my cat's trying to escape. Hang on one second.
All people have more testosterone. Just to answer Dr. May. That's why we have more bald people today. Testosterone is right.
Let me see. I keep seeing more stuff here. Where is it at?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think PJ was talking to her about maybe talking to her because I think it would be interesting to talk to somebody who has not been able to maybe speak out a little bit. I'm sure there's lots of stories we haven't heard, and for whatever reason they don't want to come forward, or maybe again they're just trying to understand what they're seeing.
Well, I can tell you the result. When I shared my story in wonder, seconds after it happened, to the other people on the bus in the desert who hadn't seen it, I was outside the bus and I saw it in the desert, right? The mockery that I got within seconds from that one professor really stung.
Cameron, did they not see it because they were in the bus?
They were in the bus. I mean, I guess we were just the three of us that happened to step back out, and we had been there for the eclipse. And we saw this incredible phenomenon in the sky that lasted several minutes, and we were just literally almost like hypnotized, standing there, three of us. And the bus driver came and said, "Hey guys, we got to go back to the city. What are you doing?" And we told him what we saw. He's like, "Oh, those are just." He said, "Those are the aliens." He was an indigenous native. He said,
that
"Those
happens
are
all the time,
guys for hundreds of years, right?" And so, but we've got. I mean, it really hurt me when I got back on the bus seconds later, and people were like, "What? Wow, did you what?" There's so much people are processing what I'm saying, and this guy was just like immediately, trigger ready to go. The laughter.
Yeah, they usually do.
Let it go, and it hurt. So I was like, why? If that's one, why would anyone want to publicize this?
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of times people get mad when they don't get to see what you see, and then they go from questioning, "Are you sure you teasing, messing with me? Why didn't I get to see it? How come I'm not special?" Just lots of things around people's.
How come I didn't get to see it?
Yeah, exactly.
We talked about Gil's talking about paradigms. I've read fascinating reports of people seeing UFOs while the person standing right next to them couldn't see it, and the person who couldn't see it also didn't believe it was possible, and so their own brain, locked out, because it was, as people in the chat have said, our brains process information, and if something is too outside the field of reality for it, it will close it out so that we can't actually see it. It will overwhelm us. So a lot of these accounts of people standing there in Central Park in New York, seeing a huge triangle-shaped ship hovering over Central Park, and they turn to the person next to them and go, "What the hell is that?" And the person goes, "What? There's nothing there."
Yeah, oftentimes people.
He probably wouldn't have, because his own brain would have locked out the abilities outside of the paradigm.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people in a group, some of them see the UFO, some of them don't. I remember interviewing Reverend Ivan Stang of the Church of the Subgenius, and I asked him if he'd seen a UFO, and he said, "I cannot see UFOs, apparently," and went on to describe a situation where he was hanging out with the Lakota and the Sioux, and he was getting some wood and then bringing it back to where he was staying, and he saw a classic silver disc nighttime, and when he talked to other people about it, not only did they blow him off, but they said that's not what you saw, and on the other hand, in a lot of these places, the native peoples will see this stuff all the time. And when you bring in the white European descended UFO researchers, they don't see them, or they may see them, and then the original witness can't see them. So it very much has to do with the paradigm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
And it is related to consciousness, which I do believe, because I actually believe that I've been discussing how an hour before this event happened, I had been talking to people in my group about how we were out of the Atacama Desert, and it's famous for being the most number of UFO sightings in the world, to the point that the Chilean government has a public X-Files type, project. It's not secret.
It's
public.
the hot spot among hot spots.
Exactly. And you people are encouraged to, and so I was like, wow, this place, but I didn't actually expect to see one. Did my consciousness focusing on the UFO summon it within an hour? I think so. I mean, it wasn't a coincidence that I brought up the topic, and because it's not just a physical thing. It is, I believe, related to consciousness.
Were you by any chance, Cameron, able to take a photo of the UFO that you saw?
I wasn't meant to. My phone had, out in the desert, and my phone had lost all battery. We'd been there all day because we're waiting for the eclipse, and I'd taken some incredible photos of the eclipse, which are actually on my Instagram, right? Mm-hmm. I'd never seen a photo eclipse in my life. That in itself was a miraculous experience.
It is,
then after sunset, like 3 hours later, I have this miraculous experience. My phone was already dead, so I wasn't meant to take a photo. It was not my destiny to take that photo, but all I have is an account, and the inner knowing being, at the time, a 47-year-old guy who had seen a lot in life, who'd been on ghost hunts and all this other stuff, and never, ever, ever in my life had I seen something, even though I'd longed for it from childhood. I remember as a kid looking out of the window in Brooklyn, and I once thought I saw a UFO. What it turned out to be was a police searchlight. For whatever reason, was going through the sky like a Batman light, right? And it was just going through the clouds. When I saw a circle, and then that was a heartbreaking disappointment when I realized what it was. Right?
Like, yeah.
Never seen it. And when I saw this, the moment I saw it, I just stepped off the bus and I looked up, and there's this stunningly bright light in the sky that shouldn't be there. That was making no sound, and was solid red, not blinking like any aircraft has to have a blinker light to differentiate it from stars, indicator lights. It was solid bright red, and then after a few seconds, it became solid bright green and stayed bright green for about several minutes and turned back to red and then moved in the sky. And the moment I saw it, the moment I stepped on the bus, my body reacted. I had a visceral bodily reaction of something being totally wrong, sense of awe, and the words came out of my mouth. What the hell is that? I've never had that from seeing an airplane, a satellite. I've seen satellites go across the sky in the Milky Way, a drone. I never had a physical reaction of awe and wonder and fear in an instant like that.
Yeah, and that's us now. Can you imagine? I mean, right now we are so used to just having things in the sky nowadays because that's what we're used to. But Doctor brings up a point here that I was gonna mention as well. That even back then when there was no such thing as blips and helicopters and planes and whatnot.
We had no flying machines of our own.
Yeah, absolutely. To see
the wonder you feel when you see something like that in the sky that is beyond any comprehension. They're recorded at times when people barely had horse and buggy on the earth, right?
Right.
And then you see something like this in the sky. Yeah, you can interpret it as gods or whatever your paradigm is going to.
I can imagine. Because I believe I had seen somebody had mentioned one time the famous picture of I believe it's the Virgin Mary with baby Jesus
with that UFO and
in that back. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I know. Yeah.
So I don't know if it was done later or if it's something that
it's Middle Ages, right? It's sort of like one of those Florentine kind of paintings, right? Mm-hmm. But certainly by that period. Mm-hmm. Someone is just showing flying discs in the skies, and relating it to religion as a divine.
The one that really gets me, guys, is the painting where if you look in the background of the right side of the painting, there is a man with his dog, and he's pointing up at what this thing looks like a flying saucer, and the dog is looking up at it and maybe barking, and the people that are the curators of these sort of religiously inspired paintings say no, that's just a way of showing that they're holy. You have these rays coming out like behind the Madonna and behind Jesus and things like that. And so they tend to just blow it off. But once you look at the woodcut from Germany, I'm spacing the town, but it's got like all of the different shapes of UFOs, and it's basically explaining this vision that people saw in the sky of all these different UFO and crafts that were fighting each other, some sort of war. I wish I could remember the name of the city that woodcut was from, but once you've seen that, the religious objections to the things that you see in paintings, I think, tend to go away.
Yeah, and again, as people have been pointing out in the chat, one can certainly look at stories out of our scriptures, and certainly with our current paradigm, interpret them as UFO phenomena, such as Ezekiel's wheel, and and all these wondrous stories that the Bible writers were interpreting it through their paradigm, and then we can certainly take those same stories and go, that sounds like that flaming chariot with multiple wheels sounds like a machine in the sky, right? That's what it sounds like. That, and if we saw that, that's how we would interpret it. But very much these experiences, it is not surprising to me that religious art would have these things linked to appearing in them, because when I had the experience, it felt otherworldly. It felt both sacred and terrifying. I mean, my body reacted in a, this is not normal, right? My heart started pounding. I started sweating. It was automatic. My body knew something that was not normal was happening in front of it, right? It's not something I did consciously. And so it was a religious experience if you interpret it that way. I mean, I could have interpreted that to have been an angel or a jinn in the sky. Maybe that was what it was. I actually asked my Sufi master in West Africa after this experience, what do you think happened to me? And he told me, well, during the eclipses, portals to the jinn dimension open. So it is likely, again, I would interpret the UFO phenomenon through my paradigm Islamically, which is the jinn and interdimensional beings, but that one of those beings or their craft, whatever, came through the portal that had opened because of the solar eclipse I had just witnessed. That was how he interpreted it.
I wanted to thank Bonzo Kilborn in the chat for helping remind me the Nuremberg woodcut, which I have shared my screen if you're interested in seeing it, Maria. This is one of these things where once you've seen this, it's very difficult to back it up with anything other than what it is. It's
were they having a battle in the sky? I mean, this is a battle in the Middle Ages. This is happening in the sky. I mean, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and they've got all different kinds of craft. Notice all the different balls or orbs. You've got the sun there, so it's definitely not the sun. There's some smoke there on the ground. So it's not.
And you've got these ships that look like they have lights on them, right? I mean, what are those circles on these metallic-looking objects? Yeah. And you've got cross-shaped objects, and of course, the one on the bottom, the black one, looks like an elongated arrow. And, it looks like one of the Star Destroyers from Star Wars.
Exactly. Yeah. And you see these throughout history. This is just one of many.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they're out there. God, there's so much though. That's why when I do these, I'm thinking, how hard is it to narrow down exactly what direction to go, and I end up going in a ton of different directions because there's so much to it.
I believe that the reason for the phenomenon, right? The broader philosophical reason for it, whether these individual entities have an agenda, whether it's alien abduction, whether it's creating hybrids, whatever people's various stories are, right? The philosophical reason for this is to remind human beings that we don't know anything. That's why you're never going to actually truly be able. I honestly don't think we're ever going to be able to fully nail down this phenomenon. It is hardwired into the universe by God. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle, right, which is basic quantum physics, is that you cannot know everything about the universe inherently, because when you're studying a subatomic particle, you can know, in the simplest possible terms, Heisenberg said, you can know where in order to find.
You can either observe it or
you know either where it is or how fast it's moving, because the experiment to find out where it is essentially freezes it, so you don't know how fast it was moving. and to find how fast it's moving, the experiment makes it impossible for you to actually know where it is at a given moment. All you can know is the velocity, right?
Yeah, the observation changes the event that you're trying to.
And so it's impossible to know certain. It's impossible to know certain things. It's hardwired into the universe in my opinion, by the divinity, by God, right? That's how. And so this phenomenon is on purpose as part of the uncertainty principle that the divine has placed in the universe. So I don't think we're never 500 years from now, there will be mysteries. Even if we contact alien races, even if we are like Star Trek exploring other worlds, there will be mysteries that our science cannot explain 1,000 years from now, because that's the uncertainty is the magic of the universe. It's not going to go away.
And here they're just talking about.
Han Solo says, I've been from one corner of the galaxy to another, kid. I've seen all kinds of strange things, but I've never seen one all-powerful force.
All-encompassing force.
He sees all kinds of strange things the Han Solo can't explain.
And here it's mentioning 75 years on from the first mysterious sightings in the U.S., the flying saucer makes its return in Jordan Peele's new film, Nope. Nicholas Barber looks back at one of the most haunting objects in popular culture. And all the different things that people have seen since then. I have to reset my audio.
I started freaking out.
I apologize about that.
Yes, okay, yeah.
But it's really interesting that the interest in flying saucers has really never waned. And finally, the government coming clean about this sort of thing is not unexpected. I mean, they can only try have long after they have the once the cat is out of the bag, it's difficult to put that toothpaste back in the tube.
Right.
So the great thing is there was always going to be new toothpaste coming out of the tube, right? It's not going to end, and that's the wonder and magic of this universe.
Yep.
It's that we're going to be doing this, and every time we think we have an answer, it's just going to lead to another question, right? And that's the one.
Every time you open a door, you see two more doors.
Yeah. And that's from Sufi mystics' point of view, that's the journey to God. It's an infinite journey, right? God.
Yeah,
God
it's the journey, not the goal, right? The path is the goal.
Mm-hmm. I think, and I think it's. I think some people maybe not get into it because we'll never have an answer. I don't know, because we always feel like we need to solve problems, and when you can't, then you just kind of
most people hate uncertainty. Most people hate uncertainty. That's why look, I'm a religious person, and the biggest argument I have with fellow believers of any tradition are sort of what I would call the fundamentalist types who believe they have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
The book says it right here. Just take it literally. I was like, the very fact that you think you have all the answers means you don't have faith. Faith is a leap over a chasm of not knowing. So you don't have any faith, and because faith is actually terrifying. It's believing in something for which there is, a level of uncertainty involved.
Right.
And the fundamentalists are not actually people of faith, because there is no uncertainty. They know the truth. They know everything. And as usual, as a result, they're wrong, because by definition, they cannot know everything.
Yeah.
And speaking to that, I have the benefit of knowing, so I don't have to believe or disbelieve. I mean, it's happened to me. Mm-hmm. So, I tend to still try and allow people to have their own little pigeonholes or shoe boxes that they put this sighting in or that sighting in, and that's fine.
Well, everyone has a journey to it. There's a lot of stuff that all of us believe certain things today that we did not believe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, in any aspect of our lives. 10 years from now, there's certain things that we believe today that we're going to say, wow, I can't believe I never believed that. That sounds crazy, right? Because it's the constant state of growth of the human condition.
Oh gosh, I know. And you'll have to excuse me. I'm trying to catch up with some chat here because
I'm not familiar with this. That Ari Bavel, who's a wonderful member of my Patreon, is also really lovely person. The Lubbock lights. I know that Lubbock, Texas has had a lot of strange experience. I think it was also, maybe Gilbert can correct, wasn't that the place where near Lubbock was where they had that UFO crash in the early 1900s that they claimed they buried a body, right? I think it's
that was in Aurora, Texas. Yeah.
Okay. So, but Texas has a lot of stuff. I'm not familiar with Lubbock lights.
And Stephenville, much more recently. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is this separate incident from the Phoenix lights, or is there a Lubbock lights phenomenon that I'm not aware of?
Oh yeah, because the Phoenix lights were over Phoenix, Nevada, Arizona. Yeah, and the Lubbock lights were old enough to be part of the Project Blue Book research, and the Phoenix lights were long after that. But I think Ari's right. Which I have to do because he's my brother, but I think that he may be right, that it may have been the first mass sighting in history. I don't know about it being a big media event. It did get covered, but it was certainly the first one in modern memory that was seen by hundreds and hundreds of people. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult to just, mark that down to, what are some of the excuses that the debunkers give? Mass hysteria, which I would submit is worthy of study in and of itself. If there's actually something that's mass hysteria, that's worth study in and of itself. But they have all these excuses they trot out. And,
it depends on the time period. With the Phoenix lights, they'll say it's just if there anything happened at all, it was military flares, or if they wanted to go that far, it was an experimental aircraft, right? Because
and actually they dropped the military flares in that case 2 hours after people saw the Phoenix lights, and that's just another example of the United States military, or the Air Force, I think in this case, following orders to scramble jets and drop flares because they wanted to be able to use that as plausible deniability.
And it works on people like, okay, I got my explanation. I don't need anything more. Now, there's a wonderful show that was not familiar with until recently, that's been on CW for a couple of years, called Mysteries Decoded. I'd never watched it. And it's actually very fun. I watch the Discovery Channel for my UFO kind of stuff, right, or the History Channel. But this is actually on the CW, which I've worked on several times. I've worked 3 times on the network, and it's actually a really interesting show with Jennifer Marshall, who plays sort of the Scully, the non-believer, who goes through episode after episode with different phenomena, with a guest host who does believe in the thing. So they just this week they did an episode of the Phoenix Lights, and they actually ran through. I think there's only one known footage of the first sighting that everyone saw, which is of this crowd. Yeah. And then they actually processed it, and they said, no, this isn't a fake thing. There's actually a craft in the sky that's blocking out the stars, and it's massive. And so Jennifer, who is certainly presents herself as the official skeptic, is like, well, it must have been a U.S. military experiment. Why the U.S. military would do a top secret over a major city where 10,000 people would see it doesn't seem like a useful thing to do for a top secret experiment, right?
Right.
Unless
they would probably test by that kind of thing in Area 51, right?
Yeah, exactly. So often I find the efforts to explain away things are even more, incredulous than the efforts to try to explain things, right? It's often like, you're really stretching the bounds of rationality with that explanation, but you're going with it. Yeah.
It's like what I was saying before about Occam's razor. You can, keep reaching for straws, and it's you're making yourself look more and more foolish the further that you go, when Occam's razor would dictate that you see something like that in the sky, especially if it's something that a trained observer would say, I've never seen anything like that before. It's no kind of plane, again, no control surfaces, no visible means of propulsion. And how far are you going to go to debunk that, rather than just say, well, that person honestly believes they saw something very unusual?
Well, and that it comes down to, again, that issue of the leap of faith, right? When we're presented with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, or this uncertainty phenomena happens, and a lot of people just can't make that leap. It's too scary. It's that moment in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where he has to literally cross a chasm. He sees no way across, and he just Indy takes a step into darkness, and then an invisible bridge appears that was always there, but he couldn't see it, right? But he had to take that step. He literally had to take a step into the chasm, trusting that there would be some solution and that he wasn't going to fall to his death. And then he turns out there's a bridge that he couldn't see. And so, yeah, and that's the test, right? Because literally that's the chasm you got to cross to get to the Holy Grail. So it's a very symbolic move. And that actually brings us back to a chat that was brought up earlier. Has disclosure happened already? And I would suggest, and what I suggested earlier, disclosure has been happening, for decades. And that's why we're all sort of immune to, oh, well, you got these U.S. aircraft, that the fighter jets that are seeing, craft that can move, literally hundreds of thousands of feet in seconds, right? That's not scientifically possible based on our knowledge.
3,000 miles an hour with no sonic boom.
Yeah, they go 5,000 feet in the sky down to the ocean in half a second and back up, right? That's what the mile in the sky down to the ocean and back.
That's what Commander David Fravor said he saw.
Yeah, and that's what the pilot saw. Is that, they couldn't replicate that. If they tried, they'd die because the G-force.
Actually, they were testing out a brand new radar system that they'd installed, and they were able to see things at 80,000 feet. And this craft went from 80,000 feet down to 50 feet above sea level, like you were saying, in a couple of seconds. And there's nothing on this planet that we know of that can move that way.
And if we have that technology, or if an adversary has that technology, it's game over.
Yeah,
it's game over. There's no point. You're not going to win any war against whoever's got that.
Right? And if you go back and think about the reason,
publicly and say it's over, right? It just at that point, whoever's got it, whether it's Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, or my fellow Pakistanis, whoever's got it, or Americans,
they're just going to surrender
over in front of the public and say, no one can defeat us. Everyone has to obey us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to keep in mind that, this is also an anniversary of the 1952 flap that happened on the East Coast. In that case, there was footage of sort of a fleet, if you will, of UFOs that were going over the restricted airspace of the Capitol building and eventually the White House. Yeah. And then there were sightings all over the country. The Braxton County Monster, or the Flatwoods Monster, was one of these UFOs that had broken off from the main one that was tracked on radar. And then they just separated, and there were dozens of them. And then you had sightings 1952 is probably still the biggest year as far as UFO sightings go in the United States.
And that was, when did the Soviet Union explode its own bomb? It was in the 50s.
1949, I believe.
Was it as early as 49?
I believe it was.
Okay, so definitely by then you've got an arms race, right? You've got a nuclear arms race. And it's not a coincidence that, to me, it's not a coincidence. And I worked on the TV show Roswell, New Mexico, and I've been to the actual Roswell crash site. I've been there. It's really remarkable because there's a crater there where things don't grow in the crater. I've seen it with my own eyes, right? So that's not a weather balloon that can create a crater that's, an indication of the ground where all the foliage is growing around it but won't grow in it. That's right? So, and that happens in 47, 2 years after the atom bomb, and right next to Roswell Air Force Base, which is where they have the atom bomb stored, which is where they have the only
atomic group in the world.
The only pilots, atomic group that can drop bombs anywhere in the world is in Roswell. To me, it's not a coincidence that this phenomenon happens there. And so, whether these entities are from another planet, another dimension, from God, from whatever you want to believe, whatever these things are, right? They certainly seem to want human beings to know at a moment when human beings think they are God, where we have created weapons that can destroy the entire world,
right,
that you aren't as powerful as you think you are. That's why I think we hear over nuclear sites and shut them down, to remind us, actually, uncertainty principle. You actually aren't. You can't actually destroy this planet.
Right. We're not going to let you.
Yeah, we're not going to let you.
You're not as big as you think you are.
Absolutely. You know what's so funny is I had all these things lined up to show, and I disappeared for a little bit because I was trying to bring them up. I wanted to actually have visuals of some of the videos, but they wouldn't do anything. It did this garble thing, so I'm so upset.
Censorship.
I don't know why it just wouldn't work with me. So I'm hoping that if we come back and visit again, I kind of like the subject of the UFOs. I'd like to continue searching, and maybe next time they'll work for me, because I had a bunch of stuff, videos and things like that.
Well, the great thing, because I believe UFOs are interdimensional in nature. Whatever we talk about, we'll find a way to tie it in.
Yeah.
Next time we talk about ghosts, I'll find a way to tie it in.
Yeah, we'll tie it all in. But also, because, gosh, we can go on forever. But I do have some students to get to here in a bit. But that's why I did go over. And I see you put something up, Cardinal. Can we save that for next summer? Is that?
It's very brief.
Okay.
I just wanted to read the headline.
Yeah.
Pentagon UFO study led by researcher who believes in the supernatural. Critics dumbfounded by reality TV star Travis Taylor's position as chief scientist. And of course, Travis Taylor is the PhD who's on the Skinwalker Ranch. This guy here.
He started off on Ancient Aliens, and he brings so much credibility because he's an actual scientist who says he's never seen a UAP in his life until he came onto this ranch. And then his reactions on camera when he sees one for the first time, and they're pretty authentic, right? They're the reaction I had.
Yeah, but I think I did see that one too.
This guy's a threat to the academics, like that guy that mocked me. In the press, right? Because this guy is a real PhD, and they call him reality star. He's a professor.
Yes.
Professor.
And he's got something like 3 or 4 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, he's worked for NASA, and come on.
And he's also worked for Lockheed Martin and some of the subcontractors. So he's not only a trained observer, but he knows also some of the things that the rest of us wouldn't know because we haven't been read into those programs.
It'd be interesting. I don't know if PJ's still here. I think he is, but I think it'd be interesting as a psychologist to see, to get some input on the psychology of a person. If having had an experience or seeing it or something like that, like, are they trying to talk themselves out of not seeing it so they don't have to worry about it? Or does that affect them, in their life, the way they view life, the way they, has anybody changed their views or anything? So I could be kind of interested to see the psychological aspect of it. So PJ, maybe sometime we'll have to get your input on that. But, always a fun subject. And I apologize to everybody I couldn't get to in the stream. Because I was watching, though. You guys had some interesting things to say, and
very good comments today.
Yeah, very good comments, and we're definitely watching. And I hope next time what we can do is kind of work with their we'll work with their comments and stuff, because some of them have some very interesting things to say that I'd like to elaborate on. So we'll have to do that next time. And maybe what I can do is go back and rewatch this and get those that information, and we'll plug it in for the next time so that they can be heard. Because I so appreciate everybody who comes in, and never want to have you feel I'm not watching you.
Well, here's the thought. I don't know if we'll do it next time, but I definitely want to do one. I want to do one on vampires with you guys. I want to do one on vampires because that's an interesting phenomenon. I want to talk about that at some point.
Well, that'd be great, actually, because I'm going to be bringing Vampira back. So,
I actually am a huge fan of Montague Summers. Are either of you familiar with Montague Summers?
The name sounds familiar. But...
He was a priest and not a witchfinder general, but he was sort of interested in the occult from the religious point of view. And he has many books about vampires, werewolves, things like that. So that's something that I could forward to both of you as far as links, so that maybe you can check out some of those books maybe get the PDF files, whatever.
Yeah.
And we'd have those ready for next time.
That would actually be a good thing. And then that way I can send. I want to bring back Vampira. We can tie that into the subject altogether. I think it'd be a great stream.
I know you gotta get stuff done here, so we don't hold our hostess.
Yep. So I'm gonna let you guys go. You know what? Thank you so much, everybody in the chat. Thank you, my guests, Cameron and Gail, for being with us. I hope you guys all have a good evening. Take care of each other and be kind to animals. Thanks so much for being here, guys.